Hold up. Yeah.
Swirl.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Welcome to InnoHub, the place where we gather business leaders around the world to share their knowledge, experience, and business life hacks. My name is Alex Lutsky. I'm the founder and CEO of Innovex, the company who will be hosting this event at InnoHub today with our great media partner, Emerging Europe. Back in February, we all had clear vision of what will drive the companies. Today, the world has changed. We rethink our strategies, shift our business models, and even transform our mindset. Now we're facing a new reality. Regardless of all above, companies still continue to look for new opportunities in partnerships and investments. Today, we have invited great business leaders coming from different industries, different countries, and with different experiences. They will share with us what they do to handle this new reality. I hope this event will be inspiring and will bring many insights to all of us. I'm passing the floor to Andrew Wrobel, the founding partner of Emerging Europe, who will take it from here. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depends on where you are. Welcome to the CEO Night. My name is Andrew Wrobel, and I am the founding partner at Emerging Europe, which is a London-based news intelligence and community platform. I'm also the lead of Tech Emerging Europe Advocates. I have the pleasure to moderate this session today with three absolutely amazing CEOs. All of them have come to Ukraine to live and work there. So today we're going to share some of their experiences of living and working and investing and doing business in Ukraine and in Central and Eastern Europe. So I'll start with the lady. So Lenna Koszarny, the founding partner and CEO of Horizon Capital. The next person is Andreas Flodström, the founder and the CEO of Beetroot. And the third one, the last but not least, it's Dominique Piotet. I hope my French pronunciation is not that bad. The CEO of UNIT.City. So what I would like to start with, actually, is to ask you how on earth you landed in Ukraine in the first place. And I'm going to start with the grown-up here, and this is going to be Lenna, who's been to Ukraine for what, 27 years, right?
That's right.
So tell us, how did that happen?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to participate. This is exciting. It's my first time in a studio inside, not in Horizon Capital offices or on a summer terrace. So it's pretty exciting. So how did I end up here? Let's see. My story starts in London, Ontario. I was born in Canada. My parents are of Ukrainian origin, Ukrainian descent. All of my grandparents, all of my ancestors are from Ukraine. So I have heard about this wonderful country from the minute I was born, my entire life. It was very important to kind of raise us to love Ukraine, to want to be a part of Ukraine. And of course, it was very hard to do that during my childhood because Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. We couldn't travel freely here. So as soon as we could travel, my grandmother asked me to accompany her in 1993. So I came to Ukraine at the age of 23. I shouldn't have told you that. Now you can do the math and figure out how old I am. And I'm definitely the adult in the room when you do that math. But I came at the age of 23 and I just fell in love with the country. 3 weeks of traveling, meeting people, meeting relatives, breaking bread, crying together. It just felt like home. I came to Ukraine and I felt like I had come home. And for me at that time, 23, you start to think about what your life will look like. You start to think about that intersection of your personal mission, history, where you want to be, and I decided that Ukraine was where I wanted to be. I thought it would be 2 years, and it turned into 27. That's my story.
So it's been a while then. So now I'll turn to Andreas, who's not even a teenager, if we look at it from that perspective. Yeah. He's been in Ukraine for like what, 8 years, Andreas? What's your story here?
Yeah, that's right. We were 2 Swedes who moved to Ukraine in autumn of 2012. And the long story short is that we had both learned Russian at the time, started with spending quite a lot of time in Russia, then more in other post-Soviet countries. I spent half a year in Lithuania. And we had this idea that we wanted to build a company in Eastern Europe that could have a positive social impact. And we started I was 24 at the time, so very, very similar age. And we came down as, let's call it an adventure. We moved down with Wrobel Lada from St. Petersburg down to Ukraine. I was doing my master thesis in entrepreneurship at the time, so Beetroot was essentially my master thesis work. And we just came down and we were actually evaluating Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, and Moldova. And we felt that Ukraine had this special vibe where we both saw this great potential, and also we felt that this is a place where we could live. And we didn't know, we had a 1-year plan, and then it grew 1 year more, and then came this moment with Maidan and all the transformation. And I think this is the moment when we really got sort of very emotionally attached, hooked, and decided that, this is a place where we want to work and make a difference. It's been 8 years, so that's more than half of my grown-up life as well.
We're gonna talk about opportunities in Ukraine in a moment, but I want to turn to the infant now, who is celebrating his first anniversary actually in Ukraine right now. Wow. Dominique.
Yes, actually, it's my 1-year anniversary. I moved a year ago, exactly on August, today, actually, a year ago today. My story is pretty different and similar in many, many ways. I'm a tech guy. I'm passionate about tech. I'm passionate about the power of tech on organization, society, communities, culture. I'm French and American, but I'm French first. I think you can tell. And growing up in France, I felt like in the late 90s, very early 2000, there was not a lot of opportunity for tech entrepreneurs. So I decided to go to the place where I felt there was the most opportunities and energy, and it was San Francisco at the time, and it was 2004. So I left France for San Francisco and lived a very happy entrepreneurial life in San Francisco for many years, created my company, sold it. And then I was missing that energy. And San Francisco is a very different place from where it was in 2004. In many ways, I think those large tech companies have become very corporate companies with a strong corporate culture. And as an entrepreneur, I can't really relate to that. I felt like, well, you know what? I'm bored in San Francisco now. So where am I going to find that energy of young people who are really willing to create new things and to change the world with technology? And then I met the people who are behind UNIT.City, the founder of UNIT.City, and the team, and I totally fell in love. I was like, okay, this is exactly the energy I was seeing in San Francisco in 2004 when I moved, where it's tough, but everything is possible. We just have to work. We just have to have the passion. We just have to have the energy. And I strongly felt like, and I was like, well, you know what? Let's pack our suitcases. We're moving. And 1 year after, I'm still there, and I love it.
So we're going to talk about different opportunities in a second, but I would like to ask you about the not only the challenges, but also those difficult moments where you were thinking, maybe it's not the right place for me. Maybe I should do something different. Maybe I should go somewhere else. What was that? Could you share that with us? And I'm opening that to any of you who wants to start.
Well, for me, that moment was early on, and I can't think of a moment recently that felt like that, but certainly in 1993 when I made the decision, I left a good job in Toronto on Bay Street. I had all of my suits, my suede shoes, everything. I came to Kiev. I'm thinking I'm going to be in Kiev, and instead I took 100 train trips in the first year to Żółte Wody. For anyone who knows where Żółte Wody is, you're taking the train, you're heading into Dnipropetrovsk direction, and it's a town of 40,000. It's where the uranium processing is done. We had invested in an iron ore mine, one of the deepest, a kilometer down. I'm wearing my suede shoes. I'm wearing my Bay Street suit. I'm going down into the mine. I mean, at some point I was thinking, what am I doing here? And those are very different times. If you look at 1993 and anyone who came in the 90s with the hyperinflation, with even flying into the country and you're grabbing your suitcases off of a flatbed truck at Borispol, I mean, you can't even compare to what the country looks like now. I mean, it's a truly European country with a European feel and very different from back in 1993, although I do have many memories from that time.
Andreas?
Well, I mean, it's always a bit of a roller coaster, and I think that's also one of the charms of it. So I think you have these moments when you feel that things are maybe not going in the right direction and so on. But I mean, seriously, so in 2014-15, when everything was at the most hot points of the conflict and so on, of course, from a business perspective, we had to make like different considerations. We were looking at places where we could potentially relocate the team or open another office if things would get worse and so on. But the interesting thing is that we made plenty of this analysis, and we always came to the conclusion that actually, despite the issues in the country, Ukraine is the place where we think that we will be most successful in the long term. So we will stick to Ukraine. I mean, we have an office in Sweden as well, but really the big majority is here. So
gotcha. And
yeah.
Dominique?
Well, for me, it's when you move to a new place, it's about the culture. It's about understanding the people and connecting with the people. And I had the same experience in the US, well, in a very different way. In the US, you go to San Francisco and you feel, oh, I know San Francisco, I know the US, I speak the language, I've seen the movies, I know. And then 6 months after you moved in, you're like, oh, but I don't understand anything of what's going on. I don't understand the way people work. I don't understand the way people behave. I don't understand the connection between the people. And I had kind of the same feeling. I think I strongly relate to what Lenna is saying, because I feel like the country has a very European feel. Like when you're in Kiev, of course, it's not Paris, but you feel that it's kind of a little bit of Paris. I don't feel a stranger at all in the city. And then all of a sudden you realize that you don't, first, you don't understand the language from me. I don't yet understand the language. I don't speak the language yet. And then you go into a meeting and something happened and you're like, I'm completely lost. What happened? And those moments where you feel like you're lost are those moments where you're like, okay, I can give up, or I can keep going and try to dig deeper, because this is where it's interesting. And well, in my first year, I had a few of those moments where I was like, oh, I don't understand how that decision has been taken. And you're like, what? We've decided this, but yeah,
But since you came to Ukraine, you've all become sort of ambassadors of the country, elsewhere. Whenever I've spoken to the three of you, and I clearly see how much you care about the country. But I think that you have experienced that moment when you have to explain to either foreign investors, for example, that this is Ukraine and that it's really worth doing business there. I'll give you my example. So a couple of weeks ago, I was speaking to a British investor, and we as an organization were helping them locate the next sort of outsourcing destination, actually, outsourcing or delivery center, if you will. And we said, oh, what do you think? Trying to understand where they are coming from, what they are actually looking for. And we said, how do you feel about North Macedonia? How do you feel about Georgia, for example? And they were kind of a little bit open, to those countries. And then I said, what about Ukraine? Yeah, it's kind of not on our radar yet. We're not, I think we would have to do a lot of convincing when it comes to our board to make sure that, that they sort of understand whether it actually makes sense. So if you can help us, we will be happy to explore. So I wanted to ask you how you actually are trying to, or how do you try to, I'll give you one more example. I remember a chat with someone who was referring to the war, and in the eastern part of the country, and we were saying, I told them, but look, if you look at Lviv, for example, it's the distance between Lviv and Frankfurt is the same as between Lviv and the eastern part, where the sort of war zone is, and they were all surprised that it's so far away. So, you have to do a lot of explaining. So I would like to learn from you what kind of arguments you use in situations like that. That was a very long question, I understand.
I can go.
Sure.
So I think when I present Ukraine, I like to ask people what they know and what they think about Ukraine. And unfortunately, the main things that people who are not so deep into the topic is relating to it's Chernobyl, it's the war, it's maybe the Trump scandal, it's corruption, a post-Soviet state, and so on. And the sad thing is that, of course, all of these things are true, but it's just such a, for my Ukrainian reality, are very small pieces of the reality. The main point for me is that Ukraine is a country within Europe, which is truly in a transforming state, and I'm trying always to use my own example, as I could have chosen to go to pretty much any country in the world, and I choose Ukraine as a place where both to live and to develop business. And I think the reason is both because I love the culture and the country and the soulfulness of the people and so on, but also because it's a great place for opportunity, especially if you're an entrepreneur or maybe in the tech sector, but also in other fields, despite all the problems and things as that, which are also true. And that's, I think, talking about your own example there is at least what I'm usually trying to do.
Yeah, for me, you know, our investing started by managing U.S. government money. So we were in a soft cocoon, you know, in a very safe cocoon, managing 150 million of U.S. government money. And then we decided to spin out in 2005 and do what enterprise investors had done in Poland, spin out and raise additional private capital, and ended up raising over 750 million over the years. But I remember that first private fund when we actually had to bring a map. You know, the first page was a map. This is where Ukraine is. You know, east of Poland, here is Turkey, here is Belarus, here's, you know, where Romania is, here's where Russia is. And we had to explain where Ukraine was. And there is so much now negative perception in the media. And what's amazing, we always try to get investors to Ukraine. You know, that's difficult with the COVID-19 reality. We had to move our annual meeting online for this year. But when we bring investors to Ukraine, when they see the country, they can't believe it. I mean, they are so amazed at everything, from the vibe, from the shopping malls, from the city, from the street scene, etc. But also, you know, we realize that it's not enough to wait to bring people to Ukraine. We have to go where the investors are. And that's where, that's why we did start Ukraine House Davos. That was pretty audacious, you know, to go right on the promenade in the middle of Davos during the World Economic Forum and to set up Ukraine House. And I remember, you know, that first year, it was so small, it was we could fit, you know, 30 people. And then Dominique, we were together in Davos this year, was the third year, and it was two houses. It was fantastic. And so many people coming through. It was packed. I think we ended up having over 7,000 people who came, and they were all amazed. They were listening to these tech entrepreneurs, listening to these, you know, visionary founders of their businesses and saying, this is not what I imagined Ukraine to be. So I think we have to go there. It's almost like missionary work.
Yes.
I also have this experience with basically every foreign visitor we have here in Ukraine is positively surprised. So that's says something about the image, but it also says something about the reality. Yeah.
Perception versus reality. Basically.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you just need to drag these people sort of first to the country, to show them the country, and then they fall in love with it, basically.
I'm going to tell you a story. So I'm in the US right now, and I'm having dinner with my parents-in-law. And my father-in-law looks at the news and said, oh, they just seized all those property from this, in the US, from this guy from Ukraine who used to own a big bank. And is this what it is about? Are they laundering money really in the US, as the FBI is saying? And I'm like, oh, Jesus, again. You know, it's, we're doing such a poor job. And my answer to him is like, well, and look what you have, or look what we have as a president. Do you think he is completely clean and completely nice in the US as well? I mean, and do you think, and I'm like, guys, I mean, the storytelling, we're so bad at storytelling. We're so bad in the relationship we have with the press. You know, and the second part of the story is there is a new consulate general of Ukraine in San Francisco, and he just arrived a few weeks ago. So I'm trying to help him as much as I can with my connection and helping me finding the right people. And he tells me the first thing I have to say is first that I speak English. Which is his case. His English is impeccable. And two, I have to do exactly what Lenna did, show a map. Where is Ukraine? And then show the numbers. And people are amazed by the numbers. Then the third thing, and it's obvious, I think we feel the same thing. We have to bring people to Ukraine. I mean, when people come to visit UNIT.City, they are blown away. They're like, what? We had no clue something like this existed. And they are blown away by the mission. They're blown away by the vision. They are blown away by what we're trying to build. It's I mean, it's world-class quality, you know. It's just the storytelling is terrible.
You
Yeah,
know,
I
if
totally
I can,
agree. Go ahead.
yeah, Andrew,
Go
if I
ahead.
can, I have to jump on that because the storytelling, you know, I remember back in 2015, you know, it's what Andreas was saying about the tough times, 2014, 15. I mean, imagine we had a 70% devaluation. We have, you know, all of the economic, the minus 20% GDP decline. I mean, it were very tough years. And I remember that when Ukraine was doing this U.S.-Ukraine Business Forum in 2015, and the Ministry of Economy, they asked us to help, you know, to help. And I just been to Moldova the week before, and I went into the hotel, and they had this video about Moldova running the entire time. I mean, really a beautifully produced video, amazing. And I remember going to the Ministry of Economy, and they said, look, guys, help us. You know, we want to put our best foot forward. And I said, well, what do you have? Like, you know, what do you need? And they're like, well, we want to do a booklet about the industries, you know, a leaflet. And I said, leaflet, booklet. How about a video? You know, show me the videos you've got. And they're like, videos? We don't have a video. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, we helped them do this, you know, Ukraine Open for You video. And people gave it a standing ovation. You know, literally, I mean, there you have Yatsenyuk, you have Biden at the time, 2015, and a room full of luminaries, all the ministers, all the business community, people on the U.S. side, and people stood up and clapped. Like, it was fantastic. And we have to do that. We have to promote this country. I mean, we should be putting up videos every single day. I mean, we should really showing the best of Ukraine because there's so much to offer.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that because our Emerging Europe Awards program, which we have been doing for the last 3 years, there are entries from all over the region. And sometimes we are blown away by the initiatives that are, you know, being sort of, I mean, that people come up with, that people, you know, complete in the region. So it's just that we have to constantly talk about that and make sure that people you know, understand that and are aware of this. So from here, what I would like to do is to look at all those opportunities in Ukraine. So you've obviously been working in different fields, but I would like you to, if you were to talk about, you know, the opportunities that are not yet discovered in Ukraine, what would that be? What would you invite people to look at in Ukraine? A tough one? No.
The question is maybe where to start.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can always start with what is closer to you. So we work in the tech sector, and I mean that is, I mean, actually a quite discovered sector in many ways because it has been growing with a 20+% growth rate for many years, and it's actually a huge difference when we started to pitch Ukraine as a location for IT development in back like 5 years ago. Then it was fairly unknown. While actually now it's getting, you see a certain traction like that. People are really aware that there are good tech specialists here, but so that is like one of the really like success story that we of course need to talk much more about. But I personally think that there are lots of opportunities in different fields, and if I would wake up tomorrow in Kiev and let's say not having my current company, or I would probably look at different green tech solutions because there are so many both challenges and opportunities you could work with here in the country. But frankly speaking, I think as an entrepreneur, if you're like really ready to invest your time into understanding the reality and so on locally, there are opportunities pretty much in any field and challenges. But again, the thing with the challenges is that the challenges are the same for everyone. So if you are, let's say, brave enough to jump on the opportunities and navigate through the challenges, I would say that there's actually a bigger chunk of opportunities than in many other places you would choose for investing or doing business. Yeah.
Lenna, Dominique?
Yeah, I think like in many countries, it all starts with the people. It all starts with, for us, it all starts with these visionary founders, visionary entrepreneurs. I mean, I remember Dominique at the beginning talked about meeting Vasil Khmelnytsky, who's behind UNIT.City, and being blown away by him. And I think, for us, that's where the opportunities start. They start with people. They start with ideas. And based on those entrepreneurs that we really build this kind of relationship of trust over many years, we then are interested in providing growth equity into their businesses. So for us, of course, IT, tech, most of the deals that we're doing, over 50% of them have a tech focus. Light manufacturing, I think that's a fantastic opportunity. I think that with COVID-19 post-pandemic, when that happens, I know from the big banks, I know from my counterparts in finance that almost every one of their clients, lots of companies are looking for where they're going to put their supply chains and what they're going to do and how they're going to shift them. So I think Ukraine has an amazing opportunity for those who are looking to manufacture close to the EU, accessing Asia, accessing Middle East. We have probably 5 to 10 opportunities where companies have come to us and said, we want to relocate our manufacturing closer to EU. We're looking at Ukraine. How do we do that? So I think manufacturing is definitely one of them. Online, e-commerce is huge. We love e-commerce. We were backing the #1 e-commerce company, Rozetka Evo, so both the e-commerce side and also marketplace. But we just did, actually today we announced backing this online medicine delivery services, Leaky24, makeup, which, e-commerce, beauty products, 14 countries. So, there are so many opportunities. And, we feel fortunate that we have the ability to access them being here in the country.
And as well
so
as
it's just the willingness to explore those opportunities, basically being open to explore them.
Yeah, Andrea, it's, I think one of the takeaways from COVID is that, sitting in countries 7 hours away or an overnight flight away from your clients or your people, your delivery centers, your manufacturing platforms, for us, our investee companies, we could not do it if we weren't here. And we're one of the few that's here in Ukraine, and we always, I remember during fundraising, we kept telling our investors, you cannot do Ukraine sitting in Warsaw or sitting in Moscow or sitting in Istanbul. You can't. It's a huge country. It's a huge country. So I think that really rings true.
And I think one of the important factors is also, despite that Ukraine is not part of the European Union, it's essentially becoming more and more integrated into the EU market because of the EU trade agreements. You basically, literally, in most fields, you don't have any real trade barriers. It's mostly, I would say, psychological barriers that is still the challenge. Yeah.
And you can use it to your advantage in terms of currency. It's very interesting.
Look,
Dominique?
There are around, I think, 150 to 200 Swedes in Ukraine. So it's like almost nothing. And there is I think between 30 and 50,000, don't quote me on this, in London. And I'm I love London. London is a great place. But if you look at the opportunity available, and then you see 50,000 Swedes there and 150, 200 in Ukraine, it's like, come on. And I don't have the statistics for other countries. But the point is, it's much more opportunity available than there are companies, entrepreneurs taking them, basically.
Fully agree.
Dominique?
Yes. So I 200% agree with what he said. I'm going to share a little personal experience, actually. So when I sold my company, I did two things. I became an LP in a fund in San Francisco. And then I bought 2 hotels in my favorite region. We did that with my husband in close to Yosemite in California. Those hotels were historical hotel from the gold rush, and they need complete renovation from marketing to architecture. And we looked at a lot of marketing agency, a lot of our architects, and basically, we found the most talented in Ukraine. And today, Baalbek Studio, which is, I think, one of the most creative architecture firm, there is out there for hotel industry. They did Bursa in Kiev, is redoing my two hotels. And Tweed, a Ukrainian marketing agency, is redoing all the branding and all the marketing. And actually both are already working in the US. I mean, Baalbek did some amazing work in San Francisco in a few co-working space, turning a church into a co-working space. I mean, amazingly creative, amazingly beautiful. And I'm like, the people don't understand the talent we have in Ukraine, and it's not just in tech. I mean, I'm talking about architects. I'm talking about marketers. It's unknown. And when I talk to my friends, oh, did you know that church that has been turned into a co-working space in San Francisco has been done by a Ukrainian firm? Nobody knows. And that's kind of the thing. It's like when you talk about Wrobel, when you talk about Pretley, when you talk about our unicorns, and nobody knows they're Ukrainian. So the opportunity is enormous because of the talent of the people. They are real world-class talent. I mean, honestly, when I compare the architect from San Francisco or New York that we pitched for the project for the hotel and what our Ukrainian Baalbek studio came back with, I mean, I'm like, and it's not even a question of price, because at the end of the day, we're paying the same. So and I would not want people to see, oh, Ukrainian is cheaper. No, it's not enough. It's cheaper, but it's also as good or even better and more creative. And honestly, for us, it was not even an option. I mean, we choose the Ukrainian. But if I had not been in Kiev, I would not have thought about, okay, but what about the local talent? And you know, that's kind of the thing. We need more people to come.
So we're going to talk about talent in a second. In the meantime, I'll just ask our audience to send us questions. If there are any questions to our speakers, please send them over. I'll do my best to ask them. So you're talking about talent, but of course, you know, if you look at it from I mean, there's a lot of migrants as well. So a lot of Ukrainians are basically leaving the country, be it for Poland or, you know, for the Czech Republic or further afield. Do you think that this pool of talent is sustainable going forward? Anyone?
Okay, maybe I'm going to start because actually part of the mission of UNIT.City, a big part of the mission of UNIT.City, is to provide a platform for Ukrainian tech talent to stay home, to feel like that they will find the opportunities in Ukraine, in Kiev, in Kharkiv, soon in Lviv, to find a good job that they love, that is well paid, or create their company and find the support they need to create their company and in as safe way as possible, because it's never safe to create a company. You should do something else if you want to do something safe. But you know, it's kind of our mission. It's what we're trying to do, because we recognize that this is an issue. And so we have a coding school called UCode, and we ask the student to stay 3 years in Ukraine after they graduate. And we feel, and they don't have to work for any of our companies. They can do whatever they want, but we feel that it's important that we stop that brain drain. You know, and I always say that I myself left France to move to Silicon Valley because I couldn't see the opportunities in the tech industry in the early 2000s. And there was not a good culture of entrepreneurship. Things have changed. And so it's possible to change a country and to turn it around to make things possible. But it's a lot of work. So but I think, and I see many initiatives everywhere. It's not just UNIT.City, of course. It's funds like Horizon Capital investing in tech companies, because in Ukraine, because it shows that not only there is an opportunity, but also you can raise money here. You don't have to move to the US, or not as soon as you used to have to.
Lenna, Andreas, would you like to add?
I would. There's two sides to this, and because we back Ukrainian companies, companies in the region with capital, with financing, I mean, absolutely, I'm in the camp of I want Ukrainians to live and work and prosper in Ukraine. I want more economic prosperity for this country, and I want people to stay here and create that prosperity. At the same time, I do have a great deal of empathy and understanding for Ukrainians who have gone abroad and who are sending money home, supporting their families, and doing whatever it takes. I mean, when you look at the numbers, it used to be $5 billion a year in remittances 5 years ago. It's $12 billion last year, and that's money that comes into the local market, that drives domestic consumption, that helps people pay for hospital services, etc. So I understand it. I'm also a board member and vice president at Ukrainian World Congress. So when President Zelensky said there's 60 million Ukrainians worldwide, I mean, also I'm one of the people who has come back, and I'm investing and choosing to spend my time. So I'm okay as long as Ukrainians go abroad and then come back and invest and raise their families, like I'm doing in Ukraine. That's fine. That's fine with me. But come back.
I can actually add to that. I mean, I think in the modern world, migration in general is kind of a natural thing, and there are many different reasons why people leave the country, and I mean it can be economical reason, but not only. I mean, for example, when tech specialists leave, it's usually not economical because their economical situation is actually objectively better in Ukraine. But then it is usually about other things like having a safe healthcare system, having roads, having feeling safe, basically society. But I think so. Of course, there are a lot of challenges that needs to be handled internally, and also even the thing about actually showing the opportunities that exist in Ukraine, because I don't think all the Ukrainians, if you go to a village, I am 100% convinced by experience that not everyone is even aware of the opportunities that exist within the country. And so I would even turn it a little bit toward, I mean, maybe the main problem is not even that people are leaving the country. The problem is maybe even more that not so many people are coming. Because if I look at my study mates from university in Sweden, I mean, I think like 20-30% of them live abroad, and it's normal. But at the same time, an equal amount of people has entered the country. So I think Ukraine has a problem of an outflow. But we actually, just before the corona, it wasn't very timely, but we started to sort of promote relocation to Ukraine, sort of for young IT specialists in Europe. Come and try out Ukraine. And the interesting thing is that you would have, as an IT specialist in Kiev, you would have a better living standard financially than you would have as the same level IT specialist in Stockholm, for example, which is...
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's I have the numbers.
Wow.
Okay, so imagine we have someone is watching this very panel now, and they thought, okay, I would like to explore the country. How should they start?
Fly to...
What
would you advise them to do?
They should call me or Andreas or Dominique. They should write to us. I mean, but seriously, it's not the easiest country to navigate by just arriving, although people do it and they do it successfully. They love it, coming to Lviv or coming to Kiev or Kharkiv or Poltava or Odessa and just exploring it. But at the same time, like looking at, there's plenty of, Ukrainian ambassadors who have been here for a long time who are happy to kind of share their experience, share their knowledge. And, every month I get people reaching out and saying, I'm coming to Kiev, can I have coffee with you or lunch? And we're happy to do that.
And also, I mean, I think in general, Ukrainians are extremely open for foreigners.
Yeah, I agree.
So you will, I mean, if you just come and start to navigate, even if you don't know anyone, when you arrive, if you're an open-minded person yourself, you will quite quickly find open-minded people who will help you navigate, basically. And also, I think also like one important thing is to. Usually you start with Kiev, but I would like to push for going beyond Kiev because there are so many interesting places.
You
in
notice I
Ukraine.
mentioned Poltava.
Yeah. Actually, our biggest office is in Poltava. It's not even in Kiev. It's.
I've never been there, but I remember my first meeting with Andreas at MIPIM in France like a few years ago. And I was speaking to him and he said, you need to come to Lviv because of the atmosphere. There is this special ambience and I was like, yeah, sure. Every mayor would say the same thing. So, and then I went to Lviv and obviously, I saw it with my own eyes. And I actually met with him again. I remember this meeting at his, the city hall has a huge terrace there. So he took me to the terrace and he said, I always go to that restaurant to have this. I go to that cafe, to have my coffee every day. So it's, I can definitely relate to that. Dominique, do you have anything you would like to add?
I think, it's an unfortunate time, so we don't have a lot of events, but there is one thing we do very well in Ukraine, and there's one thing that blown me away is organizing amazing events.
Yeah.
So as soon as they come back, in UNIT.City last year, we organized 400 of them. We had 80,000 people coming from 60 countries. In 1 year in UNIT.City, and this will come back because people want that. They don't want only the content of the event, but they want the network, they want the conversation.
Yeah.
Hopefully this year we are going to be able to organize the Kyiv Economic Forum in I think it's in November. So those are good opportunities to come to Ukraine, to meet people, to get great content, and then to explore. And so check out our events, check the Kyiv Economic Forum. All those opportunities are great to get a first glimpse.
Okay, so what I would like to do now is to sort of take a slightly deeper dive into your everyday work and sort of your experiences related to things like staff management, for example, a bit of cultural differences, because I find it always very interesting how, that communication takes place between different cultures and, what your expectations are or were at the beginning and how, they were changed over time. So, I would like you to give me a couple of ideas related to those most extraordinary cultural differences that you experienced yourself, after coming, to or landing in Ukraine. Let's start with that.
Okay, maybe I will start because I'm fresh.
Good reason.
I'm fresh and young in the country, so still like I'm like what? And a few things. Well, first, all the good management book. I've been in Ukraine for a while, and I've been translated, and there's great management schools. So those books have been read. They are not completely applied. So management is still a very interesting thing. I think I have a very young team, so obviously it's a little bit different, but I still feel there's a lot of top-down approach on many things, even though we see a lot of collaboration, but this is one thing. The other thing is, someone told me the other day, well, in the US, when you say, oh, it's awesome, usually it means no. So, people in the US, especially in California, are very politically correct. they try not to hurt you, they try to, but then they don't do it. Or then when they say yes, it means no, but they just don't want to hurt you. It's very different in Ukraine. When it's no, it's no. And when we fight. And we do fight. We do express our opinions in meetings very openly. And I saw a lot of fights. And I'm not used to this. But at the end, when there's a compromise or when there's a decision, the decision is applied and it's applied by everybody, and it's the way it is. And so it's a little bit more conflictual. It's a little bit more open in the conversation, and sometimes it's I mean, for someone like me who has been in the US for so long, it needs a little bit of adaptation. Other than that, honestly, it's people work like everybody everywhere else. Like we just work. We want to get things done. We're very passionate. This is also something that's very interesting. Is people are extremely passionate about what they do, and I'm sure in some areas they're not, and they have shitty jobs for sure. But in my area, I mean, in UNIT.City, people are so in love with the project, so in love with what they do. And this is something I really enjoy. It's not just a work; it's also a mission.
Just one question here, because you kind of touched on it to some extent. What I'm thinking about is actually giving feedback. I remember this fireside chat that I did a couple of years ago with a guy from the managing director of an IT company in Poland. Who was sort of the service provider of a company in the UK, and both companies met. Both guys met during this fireside chat, and I asked them about this feedback. So when the British, or actually South African guy said, well, I told them, it's not really this way. It should be maybe done in a slightly different way. Yeah. They just ignored it, and they didn't do anything until he actually had to go to them and then say and say openly, and he had to say it openly, and he said, you screwed it up. You have to fix this. Then he understood, and they understood, that this was something that had to be done in a different way. So I wanted to ask you about this feedback as well, because it's something quite interesting for me.
I can build on that. It's a sort of a common thing we come to when we are doing software development and so on, especially when you work with, also in Swedish culture, you have this sort of, you package the wording nicely, yes, and you have the message in between the lines, and we always have to sort of educate our clients to sort of be more direct, like people, and actually this, I come back to, I've been 8 years here, but we come back to this internally, and now we know each other very well in the team, but it comes to a situation when I'm starting to explain something in my way, and Ukrainians will just go, Andreas, stop the bullshitting, if it's crap, tell me it's crap, and that is actually, that's kind of relieving. I this sort of shocking directness,
less stress.
Yeah, because you don't really bullshit around things, and if somebody, if you feel bad, then you feel bad. If you're great, you're great. Yeah, I feel there is less of this mask, maybe in a way,
or between the lines, really. Yeah.
Lenna, but it can be shocking for. But
I confirm.
Yeah.
It can be shocking.
Well, for me, it's a different angle, but I want to set some context because it's been so interesting being here for this, for 27 years. And even the tenure of our funds, the 4 funds, goes back to 1994. We were the first to introduce, it's like loans, equity, over 150 investments over the years. So I think back to these years. If you think of the first fund, Western NAS, 3 ministers of finance of Ukraine have come out of the organization. So, I guess what I'm saying is that I've been privileged to work with really the creme de la creme, really the top finance professionals, the first CFAs in the countries. It's really been an amazing ride. And for me, the big kind of takeaway is on decision making. Is that early on, if people joined Westness or Horizon Capital, they maybe were doing what they did elsewhere. They come to you with this laundry list of issues with everything, and you're the CEO and you've got to solve it. They come to you, here you go. And I go, what do you think? What is your recommendation? Give me your path forward. And for some people, especially kind of the new people, they look at me with this, but you're the CEO, you've got to decide.
You're the boss.
I'm ready to take the decision, but I want to hear your recommendation.
Your opinion.
And pushing back all the time, and you do have to push back, and that's for sure, is that almost the shock of, what? You're not going to just take the decision? No, I'm not going to take the decision. You're closest. You make the recommendation, and I will say yes or no to that recommendation, but you've got to do the heavy lifting.
This is super interesting. So we have built Beetroot in a way which most Ukrainians, when we came here, recommended us not to do. So we have basically went really far when it comes to decentralizing responsibility and decision making, like self-managed decision making, which has been a very interesting journey, because people would tell us that this will never work in Ukraine. People need a boss and so on. And it is. When people come into the organization, it is often sort of the mindset that you have a boss who decides something, and then you need to work. But so our approach has been to sort of shock people with trust from the beginning, and just say, like, well, you have all the tools, like you have the support, you can get advice, but you are responsible for the decision making. And the interesting thing I've seen, and now I don't have the experience of building the similar structure in Sweden of the same size, but I would say that actually I think that this approach maybe works even better, because the fact that there are so many people who are used to this very hierarchical environment and are very fed up with it makes sort of the people with the right mindset, make them extremely eager to sort of adapt to trust-based. And actually trust is something interesting, because you have, of course, issues with trust in authorities and so on in Ukraine, but I think actually between people, in a way, you have a very high trust level. Like, just as a maybe simple example is when you go to a marshrutka, like the public transport, like the fact that you can give your 100 grivnas and it goes through 20 hands, and then you always, and you always get back the change. Like, I was like, that was like surprising for me, and that means that there's actually a trust going on between all these 20 people in the bus, and nothing happens, like, or like.
I experienced that on a tram in Lviv, actually. So I know what you're talking about, really. But do you think that there is a huge difference, I would say, between the sort of younger population versus the older population?
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. The Homo Sovieticus is I think a generational different generation. The people who are part of this new generation, they think globally. They think in a global context. They think beyond this country, these borders. They're looking at what's going on throughout the whole world, and they don't see any limits for themselves. It's very exciting. I think I would have probably not stayed here this long if not the kind of inspiration, the post-Maidan, the inspiration, the kind of philanthropy, the bootstrapping, the way the young generation kind of moved ahead of their parents and grandparents, and I think it's amazing.
I agree, and I think that there is this. I have this feeling as well, as if you look at the younger generation, I think that there is a very small cultural differences to like how young generation in Kiev would be culturally toward any like Western capital. There's even, I think there is a bigger. Sometimes I think there is a smaller difference between, let's say, Stockholm and Kiev than it is even between, let's say, Kiev and smaller village or something in the countryside. And you have this sort of the generation gaps is like they feel like twice bigger in a way. Of course there are exceptions. I mean I think there are a lot of people who grew up in the Soviet system and sort of have changed and adapted to another mindset, but you can definitely feel a Our average age is like 28 in the team, so it's a very young team. But we have older people as well.
I understand. Dominique, what's your experience here?
Well, my experience is with our coding school, UCode, because I see those young developers are aspiring to be developers, 18, 19, 20. And first, they all speak English. Actually, the courses are in English, so they have to, and their English is often extremely good. And I have an open door policy in my office. Like if I'm in the office and I'm not in a meeting, my door is open, anybody can come. And I see those young kids coming to my office and pitching me startup ideas and business ideas. And it's amazing. It's so cool. And the way they pitch, the way they've obviously watched Shark Tank or stuff like that. Or the Win-Win Show, maybe, actually. And because they're really good. And I'm like, wow. And I can tell. And I also feel this young generation is not just Ukrainian generation. It's a global generation. I think you go to the US, you feel those young kids doing exactly the same thing. You go to France, you see those young kids doing, well, when I see the kids of my friends, they all know startup companies. They all know, and they talk to you about Facebook and Zuckerberg. And it's kind of that global culture, geeky, nerdy tech culture that is now very global, I think. And I think that's very new. I mean, very new. 10, 15 years old, but when I talk to my parents, they don't know anything about those stuff, and they don't care.
Yeah.
This actually relates to. I would like to read one question from our audience. Konstantin wrote, "Hi, is it possible to contact Lenna, Andreas, Dominique? I would like to show the ideas for investment." So here we go. We already have a pitch here. Lenna, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, sure. Call me. write it, send an email. Happy to hear from you. Yeah, you know what? Actually, Andrew, I was so taken with what you just said that I forgot what I was going to say. So.
Oh, okay. Never mind. We'll come back to you later. I wanted to also look at, because you've brought it up several times. You have the sort of biggest cities, like obviously Kiev, and you have Lviv and Kharkiv. I would like to look at the opportunities that the regions also offer and what it looks like from your perspective. Because if I ask someone from outside Ukraine or Eastern Europe, for that matter, if they are able to list a couple of cities in Ukraine, there's only Kiev. If we're lucky, they will mention Lviv. We actually, Emerging Europe does this sort of survey. We speak to 70 site selection advisors globally, and we make a list of 75 cities. And I can't remember how many are from Ukraine. I think around 12. And some of them are just left, behind because people have never heard of them. So I would like to ask you how you see those opportunities, in the cities that are, well, hardly known to anyone.
So I can start. I mean, we are running our Beetroot Academy in 18 different cities throughout Ukraine, and they're all cities of 200,000 people or more, which is almost all of them by now. And what I can say is that, they're all different, and they all have different opportunities, different ways, and so on. But the interesting thing is that we, in each and every one of these locations, we manage to find people with this sort of global generation mindset. I'm even so like, I kind of love them all, so I don't even really want to point out any specific locations. But if to do something, I think that one interesting location for the development of the social community and social society is I think Ivano-Frankivsk, and there has been a lot of interesting initiatives born out of Ivano-Frankivsk over the last couple of years after Maidan as well. You have this Urban Space 100, which is a sort of co-investment where people invest in an NGO who then generates money, which is reinvested into social projects. So there is this like bright spots where this community has managed to unite a bit more in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the pleasure of traveling across the whole country, and actually, everyone thinks that my ancestors are from Western Ukraine, and they're not. They're from Central and Eastern Ukraine. Actually, my dad was born in Donbas region, so I've traveled everywhere, and we have investments everywhere. They're all different. I think obviously there's going to be the front runners. There's going to be Kyiv, Lviv, that Odessa, that everybody knows about. But you know, you look at Bielotserkva, which is turning into kind of a manufacturing hub. You know, Biotech, there. You know, Stada is there, a big German pharma. Biopharma's there. You have these clusters now. Kharkiv, where a great deal of light manufacturing, machine building, a lot of that talent that you need, and IT. You know, Kharkiv is big in terms of IT. Yes. So, I mean, I encourage. I say, look. You know, don't just look at Kyiv, and investors tend to look, you know, Kyiv to Odessa and west. Yeah. And I say, you know, go further east because there is, you know, a lot of talent, a lot of people who want good jobs, who are interested in you know, working in manufacturing platforms, IT, in everything. So yeah, I mean, don't ignore the rest of the country. It's very different. It's very different.
And a little bit for the same reason why you shouldn't ignore Ukraine and look at Ukraine, you should also not ignore everything else but Kyiv. Yeah. And I mean, even in a city like Mariupol, where we are running like an IT hub, even there, which is like literally, it's very close to the front line of the
20
conflict.
kilometers.
Yeah, and but still, you have this sort of reality of, if you look at the map, wow, it's close to the front line. But then when you are in the city center and you are working with the people again, the young generation, creative, and you're like, well, it's the same spirit. Like you have you find these talented, motivated, ambitious people everywhere.
You have to be adventurous.
Yes,
you have to be adventurous. You know, you have to Mariupol, you know, at the conference last year, you were there, you know, and it's like they just finished the road from Zaporizhzhia and, you know, we brought a bunch of investors who came to Zaporizhzhia, and then they were like, this is the best road I've been on, the one to Mariupol. Exactly, that's right. You know, but...
so you need to get on a marshrutka and sort of venture out east, I would say. Dominique, do you have anything that you would like to add to that?
No. Well, first, I'm much younger in the country. Being the infant, I haven't traveled as much. But obviously, I've been to Lviv, I've been to Kharkiv, I've been to Odessa, I've been to a bunch of other cities. COVID didn't help as well. And actually, we are opening UNIT.City in Kharkiv. I mean, it is open in Kharkiv, and it will be open in Lviv, and we will open other cities because yeah, we see the talent being well distributed. It's interesting because when I compare to France, where look, in France, if you want to do business, there's a good chance that you have to be in Paris. There are other cities, of course, and there are other places where business happen. However, if you do want to do international business, there's a good chance at one point you're going to be in Paris. I don't feel like it's the same in Ukraine at all. I feel like it's more heavenly distributed. You know, you can run an international business from Lviv, and actually there are that are run from Lviv. So it's in that sense, I feel like it's more, I would say, decentralized. I don't know if it's the right term, but that's how I feel.
So we were talking about encouraging people to sort of look beyond, let's say, Kyiv and Lviv and maybe Kharkiv as well. But shouldn't we also sort of encourage those people in those cities to be more visible out there, because I would love to hear from these cities, for example, from those startups in beyond basically Kiev and Lviv. How can we encourage them to do that? Because everyone can always email me with interesting stuff happening in Ukraine. I'm always happy to learn.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been encouraging these clusters to form, and Lviv IT cluster is big.
Yeah.
Kharkiv, Lviv also. They're wonderful from the standpoint that Stepan Veselovsky has gone to Kharkiv, gone to other cities, and encouraged. There should be a very strong Dnipro IT cluster and Odessa and Kharkiv and others, and that's the thing. Like everywhere we say unite, because like one voice is hard to hear. But when you have, like in Lviv, 80 companies that are banded together and want to create a brand, then that's a lot more powerful. So, I mean, we keep on saying the same thing. Guys, band together. Ivano-Frankivsk, I mean, there is a community that's banded together and is putting it on the map. And, everyone has to think that way, that it's not just one company, one person, one individual, that they actually come together and make an effort to let people know.
And actually, from our experience of being in the IT industry in many different cities, you can see a very direct correlation between how fast the IT industry is developing in a certain city. It's very closely correlated to how much cooperation you have between companies, so how much you have that sort of community building. I could probably even, make that statistic.
But I'm going to share a story with you now. I remember we did a seminar in London focused on the Ukrainian IT sector. This was 2017. And I think we had around 20 IT companies sort of in one room. The interesting thing was that they were all from different, sort of providing different services. So, there were web developers, they were software developers. And the interesting thing was that they kind of felt they were competitors, even though their services were different. Yeah. So they were fighting for sort of the same, buyers, so to speak, but they kind of didn't really see that, their value proposition was different. And another story, in Poland, I was chairing a session at the Polish-Ukrainian outsourcing event. And we wrote this fantastic story about, possible collaboration between Ukrainian and Polish IT companies. And then we got this comment under the article saying, well, why do Poles need Ukrainians to succeed? And what we are trying to do and say over and over and over again is that, once we unite, actually, we are a stronger power, basically. We can do more. So do you see that happening as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that because of the, it is competitive here, and people have been through these tough times, the crisis, and they're fighting often, in the 2014, 15, for survival, for, to gain an extra footing. I mean, they're lean and mean, and they're trying to do everything they can to survive and to grow. So I think there is that impression that, look, if he moves forward, I'm not moving forward fast enough, or I'm moving back, and there is a bit of a scarcity mentality that we've seen, scarcity instead of abundance. There's more than enough for everyone. I mean, the pie is really big. Actually, the $5 billion industry can become a $10 billion industry if all of you work together and put it on the map, and if there's actually some cities that are really recognized as tech hubs globally, at the very top. I hope that mentality changes. I hope it does.
It is changing, and and that's actually related to what I said before. Like, I think it's changing in different speed in different locations, but we definitely seen there's a difference. For example, like 5 years ago, when we started to enter different cities with our academy, we more often got this sort of okay, but what's in it for you? Like, why are you doing this? Like, are you gonna open an office here and be our competitors? And it's like maybe not. Like, but I think that that is gradually changing, and I don't know, fast or not fast, but I mean, you can feel it. For the last 5 years, you can feel a difference, at least in the IT industry and with people who I interact mostly with.
So I encourage everyone to also join Tech Emerging Europe Advocates and create this enormous community of entrepreneurs and then IT experts throughout the whole region of Emerging Europe. But I would like to ask you about one more thing that is quite important for investors to when they consider a specific location, and that is infrastructure and connectivity. This has been changing dramatically in Ukraine, but I would like to, hear your opinions about that as well.
Dominique, you start on this one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, and that's one of the thing. It's a question of openness of the country to the world. It's a question of how easy it is to travel. It's a question of and for example, I don't see enough Ukrainian traveling. And now that there is a visa that's or no visa to go to the European country, I think things are changing, and I think it's great. But for example, it's really hard for Ukrainians to go to the US, and I think it's a pity. I think so that's one part. Now connection. I don't know what you mean exactly by that. I mean, like
being able to fly to Kiev, for example, or also within the country. Obviously there are the intercity trains, but they don't go everywhere. So and Ukraine is a huge country, right?
Yeah, but I think all that is easy. I mean, yeah, road sucks a little bit, but do they suck as much? I mean, look, people would travel one-on-one in between San Francisco and San Jose. They say, "Wow, the road sucks here," and it's the richest country in the world. I mean, and they look at their cell phone and say, "What? There's no reception on the 280 between Palo Alto and San Jose." And you're like, well, no, there's no reception because the country has not really invested in its infrastructure, even in California. So, I mean, and you look at how much you pay for your internet and you have bad connection, I mean, in Silicon Valley. So I'm like, I don't think we can look at things that way completely. I try to look at things in a more positive way. But however, what I think is, people are still afraid to go to Ukraine. There's still a kind of a fear. I had that. My family was like, "What? You're moving to Ukraine?" And the chance I had is my dad was a diplomat and came to Ukraine a lot. 15 years ago and loved it. He loved Kiev. He even recommended me restaurants in Kiev. And I was like, okay. So at least my dad was a supporter, and that was good. But it's easy. I mean, come on, it's easy. And I think Boryspil is one of the easiest airport in the world. I mean, it's so easy. I mean, that's
straight line, pretty much. You just go up or down, and as far as I remember that.
Yeah, it's easy.
Lenna, Andreas?
Yeah, I mean, I think the country's infrastructure is vastly improving. I think the connectivity is there. The regional airports, we didn't have cheap flights before. Even, that has changed in the last 2 years. I was astounded. I mean, I used to pay $500 to fly to London, and now I can go for 29 pounds, I mean, that's a big change. I mean, that has only happened in the last 2 years. I mean, I remember 6 years ago when we had 2G. Remember that?
Yeah, I
remember when we had 2G?
Calls, yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And, it's like it quickly went to 3G, 4G, and really, as Dominique said, I have more problems in the U.S. with getting calls and lost calls than I do in Ukraine. So, look, I think the country has an ability to leapfrog. Because there are areas where there's crumbling infrastructure, they don't have to improve on that. Just forget about it. Just go right to what's new and modern and cutting edge now. And I think that should be the way forward.
So the flight.
I'm just trying to be a little bit provocative here. So, Andreas,
I can help you.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I think the flight connections are getting quicker, better, mobility okay. Trains are actually okay. I mean, I enjoy Soviet trains, and then the night trains is something that is quite useful.
I love it too.
I mean, the big problem
Night
for me is the roads, which are still. I mean, there might be some improvements, but I'm driving around a lot, and I still come to these places which is like, this is not for cars. Like, and I think that's. I know that there are various programs now for improving that, and I really hope that the money will go to the right place, because I think, in a way, it's like every of this hole you see in the road. It's, for me, that symbolizes like a piece of corruption. Like, it's somebody stole that piece of the road, and I'm not well enough informed to know what's going on and not in that sense, but I really hope that this will change in the near future.
Well, just so you know, the COVID-19 stabilization fund, a big part of it is going for road construction. So
fantastic.
You're one of the people who are happy about that.
Yeah.
So I have two more questions before we wrap up. One is from Roman Homchuk. I'm hoping, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. So could you please address following question? How could you explain the fact that there are only few unicorns in Ukraine and successful product companies, despite a huge IT community and availability of other great specialists, marketeers, engineers? Thank you. That's from Roman.
Actually, my question is a few unicorns at this stage, is it really that bad? Because in a way, I think it's actually quite good. And it's so I mean, what you see is, yes, you have a huge tech industry, and it's been, and maybe still is, mainly driven by, let's say, the outsourcing industry. And sometimes in Ukraine, you come to this, for me, strange discussion is like, is it this or that? Like, should we focus on outsourcing or should we do product companies?
Yeah.
And my answer is always, of course, we should do both, because they are all connected. Like, even look at Skype, which was founded in Estonia by Estonians, a Swede, and a Dane. Then it eventually became a huge company, and that is I think Ukraine is in a very interesting spot now when you start to get these good examples and people start to see that it is possible. And I just assuming, based on what I see and have been seeing for the last year, that it's beginning to come, and we will see much more. Well, unicorn is one thing, but maybe the even more important thing is they're like a symbol, right? But the important thing is like the other thousands of good companies that appear on the way. So,
you know what? I have something to say to Roman. Roman, this was a $110 million industry in 2003. It's $5 billion now. The government did not pour money in the way that Israel did, $900 million, or other countries. I mean, it really has been bootstrapped by the community. With almost no support. So I'm astounded that Ukraine has the unicorns that it does, the companies that it does, the service providers, the outsourcing, that they've actually now, everywhere I go, it's like, isn't IT a huge thing in Ukraine? I've heard about the Ukrainian IT entrepreneurs. Like, you're creating a brand from scratch. And I do want to say one thing that I am super happy. I'm on the board of Ukrainian Startup Fund, which is 400 million hryvnia that we're granting pre-seed and seed, 25,000 for pre-seed, 50,000 for seed, and all kinds of pitches. We've done lots of pitches at UNIT.City. Dominique knows, and this is real money that's being granted to startups. So we hope that this is going to help turn the tide. I mean, it's amazing to hear the community saying, wow, I can't believe it. And there were lots of people who worked really hard to try to make this happen and to start getting money into the hands of startups.
I'm also an expert in the Ukrainian Startup Fund, and I see the pitches that come in and so on, and I can say that there will be more successful companies coming out of this.
It's not going to be just a couple.
Yeah.
Give it 5 more years. Take over the world.
Yeah, I would like. Yeah, I would like to add to that because, of course, I also see the startup because they pitch at UNIT.City. But two things. First, I think we should be proud of the number of successful company we have in Ukraine. When I look at France, I don't know if you know how many unicorns we have in France, but I can tell you it's 5. There's only 5 unicorns in France, even though it's a huge, amazing tech community. So maybe that's not the right way to view it. Also, I would like to remind everybody that maybe unicorn is just it's just a new way to create barrier to entry in the market. You pour shitload of money in a company for them to move very fast and to create a barrier to entry because technology is more, in a way, easy to scale now. So let's look at other stuff. Let's look at the quality of the company we have. Let's look at how well they grow. Let's look at the quality of the product they're building, and we will be amazed by what we see. I mean, I see a lot of startups every day. We created the boot camp for startup. We have right now 7 startups in incubation in UNIT.City. I work with them almost every day. I am amazed. I am blown away by the quality of the product I see, and I'm very confident. They have the potential to be globally successful. And one of the things I see is I see a lot of people with seeing global first. They get it. They don't think Ukrainian. They think about Ukraine at their homeland, but they're really seeing global, and they view the market as global, and that's the way to go.
So my very final question for today: what have you guys learned from this very panel, and what kind of message would you like to pass on to our audience, who might be both from Ukraine, from across Eastern Europe, Central and Eastern Europe, and actually globally as well? Who would like to start?
Okay, maybe I'll start, but it's more like a joke than anything else. I learned that if I want to travel in Ukraine, I'd better buy a good 4-wheel drive and not use my Tesla as much. Because I tried to go to Odessa with my Tesla, and it was extremely stressful because of the infrastructure of superchargers. But I made it. No, but I mean, I learned a lot, as always, when I listen to smart people, and I'm in a good company. Thank you,
Lenna, Andreas.
Yeah, it's so nice to be on this panel because I learned that I'm not the only positive, optimistic person. Sometimes you get down reading article after article that casts Ukraine in a negative light. And what I learned today was that there's plenty of people who are ambassadors. Dominique, it's wonderful to hear how you feel after a year. Andreas, after 8 years. And there's so much, this has made me, again, fall in love with the country that I fell in love with 27 years ago.
And I learned, yeah, thank you. I learned a few things. Actually, one thing I learned is that I'm quite jealous of you for having been here since '93 and having been able to sort of see the whole, because I feel that I'm jumped in a part of the journey. I think it feels like we have a very positive feeling and vibe about Ukraine. And again, I mean, the point is not that there are no challenges. There are plenty of challenges, but it's also part of the opportunity. And
right.
It's the transformation. So if you are excited about both being part of a transformation of a country, and also good opportunities. Just book a ticket to Borispol and then take the train to Mariupol or
and call you and Dominique and
exactly,
me, right?
Yeah, we are open. I think Ukraine is open. We're open. Contact us on LinkedIn.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, guys. I have to I have to say that I can relate to whatever you have said about how fantastic the both Ukraine but also the whole of Eastern Europe or Central and Eastern Europe is. And I remember my trip to Varna in Bulgaria. This was last year in September. I took part in a conference there, and there was a young guy. This was an evening reception. There was a young guy. There were 3 people standing at the table drinking wine. And this guy, Bulgarian, was constantly complaining about how bad Bulgaria is. And the 3 of us, all foreigners, had to leave him. And we said, we don't want to listen to this.
Yeah.
This is BS. You know, Bulgaria, just like the rest of the region, is a fantastic country. And that's what we want to believe in. And that's what we want to hear. So I'm really happy that I heard all those amazing stories related to Ukraine. And I'm looking forward to actually going back, because I haven't been for pretty much about a year now in Ukraine. So really looking forward to going back. Thank you again a lot for taking part in the panel. I hope our audience actually enjoyed it and also learned quite a few things about how to do business in Ukraine and why to do business in Ukraine in the first place. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.